Here is your cheat sheet for Into the Wild. This is the true adventure story of a young man who ventures into the Alaskan wilderness, never to be seen alive again. The synopsis of the book is written right on the cover. Christopher McCandless grew up in a bland Northern Virginia suburb, the son of well-to-do parents. Like a lot of kids, he took part in extracurricular activities at school and outdoorsy excursions with his family. He even showed a keen entrepreneurial streak. But unlike a lot of high school kids in the 1990s, McCandless was incensed by inequality. He would even venture into downtown D.C., sharing conversations with homeless people and sex workers, giving out food. But something changed with his family when he attended Emory University. He found out a family secret that soured his relationship with his parents. After his 1990 graduation, he took what his family thought was just another road trip. But Christopher McCandless never returned. Calling himself Alexander Supertramp, he was inspired by his literary heroes like Henry David Thoreau and Jack London. He donated his savings to charity, then set out in his beloved old car, arriving at Lake Mead in July. Driving off-road, he camped in detrital wash in more than 100-degree temperatures. A sudden flash flood caused Alex to abandon his car, and it inspired him to shed most of his possessions. He even set fire to more than $100. During the next few months, he traveled west to Lake Tahoe, into the Sierra Nevadas, and along the Pacific Crest Trail. He wandered through Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. In Arizona, he bought a kayak, and for the next 3 months, he paddled and portaged, camped, and crossed through wilderness terrain before slipping illegally across the Mexican border, then back into the U.S., which landed him a night in custody. He also held down jobs during his 2 years of travels. He was a farmhand in Northern California. He flipped burgers at an Arizona McDonald's, and he bussed tables at a Las Vegas restaurant. And he befriended people whose lives he changed. Near the redwood forests of California, he was foraging for berries when he met Jan and Bob Burris, who he connected with throughout his journey. At one point, he revisited the Burrises, working at a huge outdoor swap meet where he charmed everyone with his outgoing personality, musical talent, and book smarts. There, he talked about his plans for a great Alaskan odyssey. Then he worked for a time in a South Dakota grain elevator for Wayne Westerberg, who became a close friend. McCandless also met an elderly man. He camped near the 80-year-old man's apartment, learned leatherworking from him, and spent endless time in conversation. After leaving, Alex wrote the man a long and ardent letter urging him to give up his apartment and wander. And the man did just that, living in a van at a desert campsite. Meanwhile, Alex returned to South Dakota, working and earning money for his adventure. And on April 28, 1992, he was dropped off at the corridor of the Stampede Trail, an old trucking road. With a .22 caliber rifle not fit for large game and no compass or even bug spray, Alex was ready for his adventure. He quickly encountered the Teklanika River, and he waded through the hip-deep waters to resume the trail. This, he didn't know, was the beginning of his end. In a clearing, McCandless found an old 1940s bus which had been outfitted as a mobile shelter for hunters and woodsmen. He stayed for 2 months, gathering food to supply himself so that he could continue along the trail. He collected plants, and he shot porcupines and other small game. For a time, he seemed happy. He was ecstatic when he reported in his diary shooting a moose, but with no way to dry or cure the meat, it quickly spoiled. He became thinner. Within 2 months, McCandless was ready to turn back around and leave the Stampede Trail. But glacial melt had caused the waters of the Teklanika to become unpassable. McCandless returned to his campsite. As time stretched on, he grew weaker, and he knew he was in trouble. At some point, he attached a desperate note to the bus. Author John Krakauer believes McCandless became gravely ill from eating the seeds of Hedysarum alpinum, a wild legume. Some evidence shows that if one eats large amounts while suffering from malnutrition or other bodily stress, a neurotoxin in the plant can cause paralysis. On September 6, 1992, Alex McCandless's body was discovered inside the bus. Ultimately, he seemed to have been at peace. A final self-portrait shows his farewell note to the world.